In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a debate that's been raging, another debate that's been raging on should you buy your primary home before you buy an investment property. We're actually going to be talking about why we all bought an investment property before we bought our primaries. All three of us, we had the same situation. So we're going to be talking specifically as to why we did that. But first, before we get into what we think those things are, we're gonna talk about why you hear people say you should buy your primary first. So I'll kick it off. A lot of the time, I experienced this when I bought my primary residence. When you live in a home, it's a much different feel. Like you learn so much more about your property, right? You learn about the house, like how a house works, the systems, when things break, how to potentially fix them yourself, how to find contractors, how much those things cost, how much does it cost to snake a toilet or get a tree trimming, all these things, which when I bought my investment property before, I didn't really know those things, right? I was kind of just relying on my property manager to call around, get a quote. I had no idea if it was a fair quote or not, but after living in my primary, I've learned a lot of these things that you don't learn when you're renting, right? Just how a home works and how to fix all these things.
I got a quick follow-up on that point. Emil, what is harder and what is easier on just kind of the physicality of home ownership?
What is harder?
Yeah, just in like upkeep or maintenance or whatnot. What is harder and what is easier?
Oh man, I don't know if it's just where I live, but I have had such a hard time keeping our grass alive. Like I've tried watering it more and more. We have a ton of grass in the backyard, and every summer, it's really hot in the summer, but like I cannot for the life of me keep this grass alive. And like now our entire backyard is just dirt. And I had no idea, like you think you just turn the sprinklers on a couple times a week and it stays alive. All these like random things outside to keep your backyard and stuff looking nice, I thought was much easier than it really is.
I have a mole superhighway in my yard. A mole superhighway. I think it's a thoroughfare, maybe a highway, maybe it's a thoroughfare. Sorry, good. That's a great answer. That's great.
Backyards are tough, man.
You've got to give it electrolytes. You got to give the plants what they need.
Right?
I've gone into rabbit holes on YouTube and the internet, and there's like so many crazy things you can do to keep your grass alive and healthy. And the truth is, I honestly don't care enough to like get that crazy about it. I'm like, whatever, it dies, we'll just reseed it and start fresh like every year. Like I don't care enough to do all that crazy stuff to maintain it.
Xeriscape, just do Xeriscape, right? It's like rocks, and you're in Southern California.
Rocks.
That works great.
I just got a quote to get it all turned into turf, but it's like 1,600 square feet, so it becomes very expensive. It's like 9-10 grand to do all turf. And I don't know how much longer we're going to be at this house, so we're punting on that one. I'll just probably pay like $200 to get it reseeded next year or something.
Grass looks good. Sorry, I totally interrupted. And I'll answer the easier part. I'll just give an answer just to give some closure to my comment. Changing HVAC filters, super easy, super good for your HVAC. And just set up maybe like a subscribe and save on Amazon to put your filters to arrive. So as soon as they show up, great, install them. Your HVAC is going to thank you later. Okay. Back to the conversation.
Tom, are you an HVAC filter salesperson on the?
I'm an Amazon HVAC filter salesperson. Subscribe and save, so it just automatically shows at your door.
That's smart. That's the way to do it.
Yeah. I just answered my question around the easier part. So, but great answer on landscaping. That's
very hard.
Very good.
I think it's easy. I think it's just like turn the sprinklers on. It's all good. It's all magical. Nope. All right, guys. What else? What are the common reasons people say buy your primary before you buy an investment property?
So this is probably the most common one is stop paying rent, pay yourself rent. And it makes a lot of sense when you are paying rent versus paying down a mortgage. In a way, you're kind of just lighting that money on fire. Obviously you get the benefit of having a place to live, but that money where it's going, when I take out a mortgage for my primary, I'm paying back some debt. Like I'm paying back some money that I borrowed to acquire the house versus when I'm paying rent, it's just gone into the ether, into my landlord's pocket. So that's, probably the most common one is to stop paying rent and pay a mortgage instead.
For people who subscribe to this, I highly encourage them to go look at an amortization table to see how much interest you pay up front versus your equity. Like, I think the average stat is like people move every 5 years or something. And so if you look at how much interest you're all front loaded on interest, right? Like towards the back end, you're paying more principal. You go look at an amortization table and rent is not down the trash, man. Like you're paying a lot of interest up front, just like it's rent. So that is, I've never liked that argument personally.
It's such a good point. It's because I think a lot of people fall into that trap of, oh, I'm getting so much equity in my home, or I'm buying so much principal pay down every single month. And then, like you said, you look at the actual numbers and it doesn't move the needle a whole lot, even in the first several years.
Yeah. I think that's another episode in itself, just talking about looking at time horizon of owning something and being more strategic about what type of loan that you get. So, all right, that's mine. Paying rent. That's the argument. And we got a good little counter argument already just embedded in the episode. Michael, why don't you go into the next points?
Yeah, awesome. So another, I think, big benefit that is pretty tangible is if you buy your primary first, you can start building equity in that home, which is kind of similar to what you just mentioned, Tom, in that you don't have to pay rent, but a lot of the dollars that you pay every month and what would be rent is now going towards paying down the principal of that loan. And also you should be hopefully seeing some appreciation. And so you're kind of getting to double end the equity growth, one in terms of appreciation, the other in terms of that loan pay down. And then at the end of some time period, you can use that equity, whether that's in form of a cash out refi or a HELOC, to then go invest. And so some people might argue that owner occupied homes tend to appreciate faster. I'm not so sure I'd agree with that, but I think that that's definitely an argument that can be made that has legs. And so if you go buy a primary and then you are planning on building equity, continuing to grow over time, and then go use that equity to invest down the road, you can get two birds for the price of one.
Awesome.
Yeah. As someone who bought a primary 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I can attest to that. Like, man, the last 2 years of appreciation and equity growth have been really, really nice in California. So, during the right times, that's a very valid argument.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
All right.
Let's transition into why. Go ahead. Sorry, Emil. I just took your line.
Come on, Tom.
I get excited. I love this topic. I get excited.
Tom's, too excited.
Too much coffee.
I'm telling you, you should have led this one, but alas, the baton passes to me. So, all right, let's just talk about.
Ooh, great Olympic reference.
That's right, dude. All right, let's just talk about why did we all invest? Why did we choose to buy investment properties before we bought primaries? So for me, I think the biggest benefit, one of the things that I knew I wanted to do, or that I think was the best thing about buying an investment property, I think it just trains you to think about investing and making money, treating it like a business, generating returns before you go and spend, right? Like we mentioned earlier, you're paying a lot of interest up front when you buy your primary. You're spending. I look at a primary home not as an investment, but as an expense. And so for me, buying an investment property was about bringing money in, making money, investing before I went out and, upgraded my lifestyle. I think that was a big lesson for me personally. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful little encapsulated business, with a little P&L, a little money coming in, money going out, debt, all that good stuff. Love that, the kind of the education piece of it.
Emil, do you feel like that if you had purchased your primary first, you would have been even better prepared to own the investment? Because like you said, you had a better understanding of just the physical structure of the business that you were buying?
Honestly, I think...
Of course, I want your honest answer.
Fake one.
No. Like if I'm being very honest, I may not have bought an investment home somewhere else had I bought my primary first. You know what I mean? It's almost like ignorance in a way lets you dive in and learn things. Whereas when you learn about all the little things that can go wrong and all this stuff, it almost like causes analysis paralysis. You think about it too much instead of jumping in. So honestly, I think if I bought my primary, it may have prevented me because I would have been like thinking about it and I don't know. I think it just would have prevented me, honestly.
That's a really great thing to think about, and definitely goes in the pro investment property first section. So good timing with that.
Thanks.
Does this investment property have a mole superhighway in their backyard? Yeah.
Yeah. How am I going to keep the lawn alive? Dang it. Investment property doesn't matter.
I'm just picturing, do you guys remember like ant farms as kids?
Yeah. Love those things.
like the little metal or plastic
what happened to
like
them?
slats, and then you stick
did
a
PETA
burrow.
like knock them down or something? Like what?
I think we just don't have kids that are that
But that's
age
what I'm
yet.
picturing,
I
like-
bet you our kids will have those, and it'll be like a fun blast from the past for us. All right, Tom, what was yours?
My reason why to buy an investment property first versus a primary is the flexibility in living. So I'm looking at an article in the New York Times, and it talks about challenging the dogma to owning a home. This came out in 2013, and they talk about this inverse relationship between home ownership and unemployment. And in Europe, it's really interesting that in countries where there is typically a lot higher home ownership, they tend to also have higher unemployment. So what I'm getting at this, and I think what the thesis is, by having the ability to kind of move around and not necessarily be tied to a specific property that you own, economically, it opens you up to be able to much more easily move around, right, to wherever there's jobs or whatnot. I mean, I think things have changed for a variety of reasons why it's a little bit easier to do remote stuff. But I was just throwing a little data into my argument, or some study into my argument. But by owning a rental property before your primary, you don't have to kind of get pinned down with other, I don't know, needs to like upkeep a house. You're very much still very free to move where you want. If you want to be like Michael and drive around in a van all over the country, you can do that. Move to Europe, wherever. So the flexibility that it affords you by still taking advantage of all the tailwinds of real estate, even more because you're collecting rent, and still, not necessarily be tied down to an area. So flexibility in living.
Very good one.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And being able to just go take a job wherever that's better suited to your needs or better suited to your personal life, what have you, as opposed to being restricted to, okay, well, where can I commute to from this location?
Yep.
That makes a ton of sense.
All right, Michael, wrap us up.
Okay, so again, kind of looking at the financial aspect of buying an investment property prior to your primary. Like you said, the investment is making money on a regular monthly basis, or for me, and I think all of us being cash flow investors, that's what we're targeting. So every single month I'm getting a little paycheck. And if you collect enough of these little paychecks, that becomes a fairly sizable paycheck. And so something that I wanted to do was let my investment properties actually pay my mortgage. And so I was trying to invest to own and accrue enough of these little paychecks that it would eventually pay whatever the monthly mortgage payment was. And that's just how I thought about investing and then owning a primary. And I said, okay, well, if I've got a chunk of money, I can either go place it on a primary or I can go place it on a investment property. Which of those two things is going to pay me? And there's only one answer. So I said, okay, this makes sense to do. And the more, again, little paychecks, the faster you start to accrue sizable paychecks. And then you can go buy your primary after that. And the other thing too is I think with kind of the cool programs that we have to purchase primary residences in the US, you can get into properties for 3%, 5%, 10% versus an investment property. You have to put 20% down. And so there's there can sometimes be a larger capital requirement to get into an investment property. But again, then it starts paying you immediately.
Dig it.
Love it. Can I give a bonus one that I just thought of?
Yeah.
Depending on where you live, we all live in California, expensive place. Where we want to live may be a little bit more expensive than where we want to invest. And so I think it would have been, this was another big reason I bought investment property first, was I had nowhere near enough capital to buy a primary at the time. So an investment property, I bought my first property for less than $90,000 in 2017. I only needed 25K down. So it allowed me to get into the real estate game before I could locally with a primary.
It's a great point. Very situational, kind of tangentially related. So, another option is to do both. House hacking is a way that a lot of people get started in real estate investing. And that is, either buying a single family with extra units or buying a multifamily and living in one and renting out the other unit or other rooms or whatever. If depending on, your situation, that can be a great way to hit multiple birds with one stone, doing a house hacking. Or by buying a house, your primary, and then you do need to move, great, turning it into a rental property. So those are sort of two ways to thread the needle of kind of doing both. And I know they're fairly common out there, and because it makes a lot of sense. Can make a lot of sense.
One more point just on the house hack too. I think it's so awesome because, like you said, Tom, it combines a lot of different concepts, and the US is so makes it so easy for people to own their own primaries on the front end. And then the US government is also very tax friendly to investors, less so to homeowners. And so when you can actually do both with owner occupant financing, it just the returns start to become pretty amazing very quickly. So if that's something you're interested in, open to, definitely look to learn more about it. We could probably do an entire episode just about house hacking, but it's a very, very powerful mechanism that you can use to get started.
We will do. Yeah.
We will do an entire
Stay
episode.
tuned. Yeah.
Michael, did you mean more tax friendly to homeowners versus investors, or more friendly to investors?
No, to investors. So as an investor, every dollar you spend pretty much is a deduction versus as a homeowner. When you're reseeding your back lawn, that's not a write-off.
Good point.
Love it. And you're getting the best of both worlds with the financing of owner occupied and the tax. I'm just repeating what you just said, less eloquently.
Moving some words around.
I think when we break the episode down, we probably just say like 10 words and just shuffle them around 100 different ways.
The entire episode is just a stream of consciousness with those 10 words.
All right, guys. Well done. I think we nailed everything we needed to on this topic. Thanks everyone for watching, and we will check you out on the next episode. Happy investing.
Happy investing.
Happy investing.